I burned everything she owned, and I'd do it again. The flames reached 15 feet high that night, fed by designer dresses and leather handbags, by silk scarves and those damned high heels she started wearing to impress him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I stood in my backyard watching 10 years of marriage turn to ash, you need to know how we built it in the first place. My name is Jack Miller, and I'm a construction foreman. Not a project manager, not a construction executive. A foreman. I wear steel-toed boots to work, my hands are permanently calloused, and I've got more scars than a stray dog. I built my life the same way I build foundations. One solid piece at a time, no shortcuts, no bullshit. I met Stephanie when I was 23, working on an office renovation downtown. She was an intern at the accounting firm, fresh out of college with a business degree and ambitions bigger than my pickup truck. I was rewiring their break room when she walked in wearing a pencil skirt and heels that clicked against the tile like a countdown timer. She looked at my dirty work clothes, then at my face, and smiled like she'd found something interesting. "You're blocking the coffee machine," she said. "You're welcome to reach around me," I replied, not moving. She laughed, not a polite titter, but a real laugh that crinkled her eyes. 3 weeks later, we were dating. 6 months after that, I proposed with a ring I'd saved for by working overtime for 4 months straight. Our wedding was small. My family, her family, some friends from work. The reception was in my uncle's backyard, Christmas lights strung between trees, my mother's potato salad on folding tables. Stephanie danced barefoot in the grass, her white dress getting stained green at the hem, and she didn't care. God, she was beautiful that night. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or expensive clothes. For 10 years, we had a rhythm. I left at 5 in the morning, came home at 6 covered in dust and sweat. She worked 9 to 5, climbing steadily from intern to junior associate to senior accountant. Friday nights were for pizza and beer on the couch. Saturdays for projects around the house. Sundays for sleeping in, her head on my chest, her hair spread across my shoulder like silk. We had traditions, small ones, but they mattered. Tuesday night walks around the neighborhood. Her reading to me from whatever book she was into while I fixed things in the garage. The way she'd leave post-it notes in my lunchbox. Stupid jokes or "I love you" in her neat handwriting. But things started changing about 18 months ago. Subtle at first, like hairline cracks in concrete. She started using words I'd never heard her say before. Leveraging, synergy, optics. Business speak that sounded foreign in our kitchen. She bought new clothes, expensive ones, justifying them as investment pieces for her career. She joined a gym, not the local YMCA where I lifted weights, but some boutique fitness studio that cost more per month than our grocery bill. "I need to look the part," she'd say, examining herself in our bedroom mirror, turning to check angles I'd never seen her worry about before. She started mentioning her coworkers more. Kevin closed a huge deal. Jennifer got promoted to partner. David drives a Tesla. The stories always seemed to carry an undercurrent of comparison, though she never said it outright. She'd talk about their lunch meetings at restaurants I couldn't pronounce, their weekend golf tournaments, their networking happy hours at rooftop bars. "You could come," she'd offer sometimes, but her tone suggested otherwise. "Though you probably wouldn't enjoy it." It's mostly just shop talk. I was proud of her success. Why wouldn't I be? My wife was smart, ambitious, making something of herself in a world I didn't understand but respected. When she worked late, I saved her dinner. When she needed to buy a new laptop for presentations, I picked up extra shifts. That's what you do in a marriage. You support each other. 2 months ago, she came home glowing, practically vibrating with excitement. "I got it," she squealed, throwing her arms around my neck. "Senior associate." Can you believe it? I spun her around in our small kitchen, her laughter filling the house. "Of course I believe it," I replied. "You've earned it." She pulled back, her hands on my shoulders, her eyes bright. There's going to be more travel, more client dinners, more company functions, she explained. But the pay increase? Jack, we could actually start looking at houses in Riverside. Riverside. The neighborhood where the lawyers and doctors lived, where the lawns were maintained by services and the driveways were filled with European cars. I nodded, smiling, even as something cold settled in my stomach. That's great, baby, I said. What I didn't know then was that her success would cost me everything I'd worked to build. The first time Stephanie didn't invite me to a company event, she framed it as a favor. It's just drinks with the tax team, she said, applying lipstick in our bathroom mirror. You'd be bored out of your mind. All we do is complain about regulatory changes and drink overpriced martinis. I was sitting on our bed, still in my work clothes, concrete dust in my hair. I don't mind, I replied. Could use a martini myself after today. She turned, her smile patient but strained. Honey, you hate martinis, she reminded me. Besides, you're exhausted. Order a pizza, watch the game. I'll be home by 10. She kissed my forehead and left, her heels clicking down our hallway, leaving behind the scent of new perfume, something expensive that replaced the vanilla body spray she'd worn for years. That became the pattern. Weekly team dinners, monthly networking events, weekend conferences, always framed as tedious obligations I was lucky to avoid. But her eyes would light up when she talked about them afterward, describing conversations about market trends and investment strategies, topics that apparently fascinated her now. Kevin was saying the smartest thing about portfolio diversification, she'd say, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine. He really understands how money works on a macro level. Kevin. The name started appearing in our conversations like a weed pushing through pavement. Kevin had connections at the biggest firms. Kevin knew about this amazing sushi place. Kevin had season tickets to the theater. Kevin. What's this guy's deal? I finally asked one night, trying to keep my tone casual. He's a senior analyst, she answered. Transferred from the New York office 3 months ago. She was scrolling through her phone, not looking at me. He's been really helpful with the Henderson account. Married? I pressed. Engaged, she replied. To some lawyer. They have one of those penthouse apartments downtown. The relief I felt was embarrassing. Of course he was engaged. Of course Stephanie was just networking, building professional relationships. This was how her world worked. But the credit card statements told a different story. Charges at restaurants I'd never heard of during lunch hours. A $300 dress from a store called Elena's Boutique. Membership to a wine club. When I brought it up carefully, trying not to sound accusatory, she bristled. It's called professional development, Jack, she snapped. I can't show up to client meetings looking like I shop at Target. You do shop at Target, I pointed out. Not anymore, she declared. The words hung between us like a blade. She softened, touching my hand. I'm trying to build something here. For us. Don't you want me to succeed? Of course I do, I answered. Then trust me. Please, she pleaded. I did. Even as the charges increased. Even as the late nights became more frequent. Even as she started making comments that stung in ways I couldn't quite articulate. Kevin was explaining cryptocurrency at lunch, she said one evening while I was fixing the kitchen faucet. It's fascinating how the blockchain works. You should educate yourself about it. I know what cryptocurrency is, Steph, I replied. Oh, she responded, sounding surprised. Well, Kevin really breaks it down in an accessible way. He says anyone still working purely for wages is going to get left behind. I tightened the wrench harder than necessary. Some of us work with our hands because things actually need to get built, I muttered. I didn't mean it like that, she said defensively. But she was already looking at her phone again, smiling at something on the screen. The distance grew wider each week. She'd come home talking about concepts from seminars, using terms like wealth mindset, and elevating your circle. She joined a book club that read business biographies. She started doing yoga at 6 in the morning instead of sleeping in with me. I need to optimize my mornings, she explained when I asked why she was setting her alarm for 5:30. Optimize? I questioned. Be more productive, she clarified. Kevin says the most successful people... Jesus Christ, Steph, does Kevin wipe your ass for you too? I snapped. It was the first time I'd snapped about him. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. He's helping me grow, she said coldly. I'm sorry if that threatens you. I'm not threatened, I shot back. I'm tired of hearing about him every damn day. Fine, she replied icily. I won't mention him. But she did, constantly, though she tried to catch herself. At lunch today, we were discussing... there's this new restaurant that someone at work recommended. 3 months into her promotion, our joint account was hemorrhaging money. Her new wardrobe. Client dinners she insisted on paying for to show initiative. The gym membership she never used because she was always working late. When I suggested she was overdoing it, she accused me of not understanding her industry. Image matters, Jack, she insisted. Kevin says... She caught herself. Successful people invest in their appearance. We're not those people, Steph, I argued. We're normal people with a normal mortgage and normal bills. She looked at me then with something I'd never seen before. Pity mixed with frustration, like I was a child who couldn't grasp something simple. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. Maybe I don't want to be normal anymore. That night, she slept on her side of the bed with her back to me, a wall of cold air between us. I stared at the ceiling, wondering when my wife had become a stranger. A week later, she came home with news. There's a company party next Friday, she announced. A big one. We're celebrating the Hartman acquisition. It's huge for the firm. I waited for the usual dismissal, the explanation of why I wouldn't enjoy it. I want you to come, she said, not meeting my eyes. Really? I asked, surprised. It's important, she explained. The whole team will be there with their partners. I want you there. Something in her tone was off. Not excitement, but resignation, like she was being forced to include me. But I pushed that feeling down. Maybe this was a chance to bridge the gap between us, to understand her new world better. I'll come, I agreed. I'll even wear my good shirt. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Perfect, she replied. I should have known she didn't want me there to show me off. She wanted me there for something else entirely. Stephanie spent 3 hours getting ready for the party. I sat on our bed, already dressed in my only suit, the charcoal one I'd worn to my cousin's wedding 2 years ago, watching her transform herself into someone I barely recognized. She'd had her hair professionally styled that afternoon, swept up in a complicated twist that exposed her neck. Her makeup was heavier than usual, dramatic eyes and red lips that belonged in a magazine. The dress was new, black, with a neckline that plunged lower than anything I'd seen her wear before, hugging curves that the gym membership had apparently been sculpting. When she slipped on heels that added 4 inches to her height, she towered over me. You look... I struggled for words. Beautiful wasn't right. She looked expensive, untouchable. You look amazing. You think it's too much? She asked, examining herself in the mirror, smoothing invisible wrinkles. No, it's perfect for... I gestured vaguely. This... She sprayed perfume on her wrists, her neck, behind her ears. Promise me you'll try tonight, she said. Try what? I questioned. To fit in. To make conversation, she explained. These people are important to my career. The way she said it, like I was a liability she had to manage, made my jaw clench. I know how to talk to people, Steph, I replied tersely. I know you do, she said quickly. Just maybe avoid politics and sports. Talk about current events or travel or dash. Things I don't know anything about, I finished. She turned from the mirror, her expression carefully neutral. That's not what I meant, she insisted. The ride to the restaurant was silent except for her giving me directions. The place was called Aurelio's, all glass and soft lighting, the kind of restaurant that doesn't put prices on the menu because if you have to ask, you don't belong there. The valet who took my truck looked at it like it might contaminate the BMWs and Mercedes lined up outside. Inside, Stephanie immediately transformed. Her posture straightened, her smile became wider, her laugh took on a musical quality I'd never heard at home. She led me through a sea of suits and cocktail dresses, her hand on my arm like she was guiding a child through a crowded mall. Jack, this is David from Mergers and Acquisitions, she introduced. David, my husband. David looked like every other guy there. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive haircut. His handshake was soft, almost feminine. Stephanie's told us so much about you, he said. Construction, right? That's right, I confirmed. Must be interesting work, he commented. Very hands-on. The pause before hands-on was deliberate, accompanied by a glance at my calloused hands. His date, a blonde in a silver dress, smiled politely and immediately turned to Stephanie to compliment her dress. That set the pattern for the next hour. Stephanie would introduce me, mention I was in construction, and watch as people's eyes glazed over. They'd ask token questions. What kind of construction? Residential or commercial? Then quickly pivot to topics that excluded me. Stock portfolios, European vacations, wine regions I'd never heard of. I stationed myself at the bar, nursing a beer while Stephanie fluttered from group to group like a butterfly in her black dress. That's when I first saw Kevin. He was exactly what I'd pictured, but somehow worse. Tall, lean, with that carefully disheveled hair that probably cost more to style than my monthly haircut budget. His suit fit like it was painted on. When he smiled, his teeth were so white they looked fake. He touched Stephanie's elbow to get her attention, leaning down to whisper something in her ear. She laughed, her hand briefly touching his chest before pulling away. It was quick, casual, the kind of gesture that meant nothing unless you were watching for it. I was watching. They moved through the party together, not obviously paired, but never far apart. When she gestured while telling a story, he watched her hands. When he laughed at something someone said, she watched his face. They had a rhythm, an awareness of each other that made my stomach turn. "You must be Jack," a voice said beside me. Kevin had appeared at the bar beside me, flagging the bartender with 2 fingers. "I'm Kevin," he introduced himself. "Stephanie's told me so much about you." "Funny, she's mentioned you too," I replied. He either missed the edge in my voice or ignored it. "She's incredible, your wife," he said. "One of the smartest people I've ever worked with. You're a lucky man." "I know what I have," I answered curtly. "Of course," he replied. He collected his drinks, martinis, both of them. "She's been invaluable on the Henderson account. We make a good team." He walked away before I could respond, carrying both drinks. I watched him hand one to my wife, watched her fingers brush his as she took it, watched them clink glasses while maintaining eye contact a beat too long. A woman named Jennifer cornered me near the appetizers, asking about what it's like to work with your hands. She said it like I was a fascinating museum exhibit, a blue-collar curiosity in their white-collar world. Her husband, an investment banker, joined us and immediately started explaining why automation would replace construction workers within a decade. "No offense," he added, like that erased the insult. "None taken," I lied, watching over his shoulder as Stephanie and Kevin moved toward the dance floor. The music was jazz, something smooth and sophisticated that matched the atmosphere. Kevin led her into the crowd of dancing couples, his hand on her lower back, fingers spread wide against the black fabric. She melted into him, her body finding his rhythm instantly. I excused myself from Jennifer and her husband. working my way closer to the dance floor. Other couples maintained professional distance, but Stephanie and Kevin moved like they'd done this before. Her hand on his shoulder, his breath in her ear as he said something that made her throw her head back and laugh. When the song changed to something slower, she didn't pull away. Instead, she moved closer, her chest against his, her face turned into his neck. I stood there, invisible in my cheap suit, watching my wife seduce or be seduced. I couldn't tell which anymore. Maybe it didn't matter. The result was the same. "They're quite a pair, aren't they?" an older woman commented. An older woman had appeared beside me, holding a champagne flute. She was watching them too, her expression knowing. "They work well together," I said carefully. She laughed, a bitter sound. "Is that what we're calling it?" she asked. "I suppose that's professional. More professional than what my husband called it when he was making love with his associate." I looked at her sharply. She raised her glass in mock toast. "Word of advice, Mr. Miller. Yes, I know who you are. Stephanie's mentioned you once or twice. When they start working well together, it's already too late," she warned. She drifted away, leaving me with the truth I'd been avoiding. I watched them dance through 2 more songs, watched the way his thumb stroked her back, watched her press against him when other couples moved too close, protecting their space. When the music stopped, they separated slowly, reluctantly. Stephanie looked flushed, her lipstick slightly smeared. Kevin straightened his tie, his own mouth suspiciously red. They stood there for a moment, staring at each other, something passing between them that made my hands clench into fists. Then Kevin leaned down, whispered something in her ear that made her bite her lip. She nodded, glancing around the room. Looking for me, I realized. But I'd stepped behind a group of lawyers discussing tax law, invisible again. She said something to Kevin, then walked toward the hallway that led to the restrooms and offices. Kevin waited exactly 30 seconds, I counted, before following her. The smart thing would have been to cause a scene right there, to follow them immediately, throw open whatever door they were behind, catch them in the act with witnesses. But something cold and calculating had taken over my mind. I wanted to know exactly how far this had gone. I wanted to see the full extent of her betrayal. I waited another minute, then followed. When I saw them heading toward the back hallway together, I knew my marriage was about to end. I just didn't know how much else would burn with it. The hallway was dimly lit, all dark wood and expensive carpet that muffled my footsteps. I could hear music from the party, muted and distant, mixed with the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. 3 doors led off the hallway, 2 bathrooms and what looked like a private office at the end. The office door was slightly open, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. I could hear voices inside, low and urgent. Stephanie's laugh, breathless. Kevin saying something I couldn't make out. Then silence that was somehow louder than words. I moved closer, my work boots silent on the thick carpet. Through the crack in the door, I could see them. Kevin had her pressed against the desk, his hands in her hair, that expensive updo now ruined. Her dress was hiked up, his jacket on the floor. They were kissing like teenagers, desperate and graceless, all the sophistication stripped away. His hands moved to her zipper. She moaned his name. That's when something inside me shifted. The rage was still there, white-hot and blinding, but underneath it was something colder. Calculated. I could burst in now, create a scene, throw punches. But that would make me the violent husband, the blue-collar thug who couldn't control himself. They'd spin it somehow, make it my fault. Poor Stephanie, married to that brute. Number. They deserved something worse than a scene. They deserved complete destruction. I stepped back from the door, pulling out my phone. I took a single photo through the crack, nothing pornographic but clear enough. Stephanie's dress half unzipped, Kevin's hands where they shouldn't be, their faces visible in profile. Evidence. Then I walked back to the party. I ordered another beer at the bar, checking the time. 9:47 p.m. I gave them 10 minutes, sipping my drink and watching the room. The older woman who'd warned me earlier caught my eye and raised her glass. She knew. Maybe everyone knew except me. At 9:58, I walked to the center of the room where the band was taking a break. I picked up the microphone they'd left on the stand. "Excuse me, everyone. Could I have your attention?" I called out. The room turned toward me, conversations dying. I saw confusion on faces, a few smirks. The construction worker with the microphone. What could he possibly have to say? "My name is Jack Miller. I'm Stephanie Miller's husband," I announced, keeping my voice steady, the same tone I used when explaining structural problems to clients. Calm, factual. "I wanted to thank you all for such an educational evening." A few nervous laughs. Someone whispered, "Is he drunk?" "I've learned so much tonight about how business gets done at this level," I continued. "About networking. About professional relationships." I paused, taking a sip of beer. About what happens when you mix ambition with opportunity. The side door opened. Stephanie emerged, her hair hastily repinned, her lipstick gone. Kevin followed a few seconds later, his tie askew. They froze when they saw me with the microphone. "There's my wife now," I said, gesturing to her. "And Kevin. You all know Kevin. He's been such a help to Stephanie, such a mentor." "Jack," Stephanie started forward, her face pale. "I was just telling everyone how much I've learned tonight," I interrupted. "For instance, I learned that when your wife says she's working late on the Henderson account, she's actually in a private office with her colleague exploring non-traditional billing methods." The room went silent. Someone dropped a glass. "Jack, please." Stephanie's voice was desperate. "I followed you," I stated, still calm. "To the office. I saw you." I pulled out my phone, holding it up. "I have photos." Kevin stepped forward. "This is inappropriate," he protested. "Inappropriate?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Like f***ing another man's wife at a company party? That kind of inappropriate?" Gasps rippled through the room. Stephanie was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. "But here's the really interesting part," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "This isn't just about infidelity. See, I've been going through our credit card statements. All those client dinners Stephanie's been expensing, the ones she's been submitting for reimbursement, they weren't with clients." I looked directly at Kevin. "They were with you. That's fraud, using company funds for personal affairs." The managing partner, an older man named Harrison, pushed through the crowd. "Mr. Miller, these are serious allegations," he began. "They're not allegations," I interrupted. "Check the dates. Check the receipts. Every client dinner for the last 3 months corresponds with nights she came home late, smelling like his cologne." I set the microphone down carefully and walked toward Stephanie. She was shaking, her carefully constructed image crumbling in front of everyone who mattered to her. "The prenup we signed," I said quietly, but my voice still carried. "Remember? The one your father insisted on? It has an infidelity clause. You get nothing. The house I built with my hands, the savings I accumulated working overtime. Nothing." "Please," she whispered. "Can we talk about this at home?" "There is no home for you anymore," I replied. I walked past her, past Kevin, who looked like he might be sick, past the crowd of her colleagues who would never look at her the same way again. At the door, I turned back. "Oh, and Kevin?" I called out. "Your fiancé, the lawyer? She'll be getting an email with those photos tomorrow, along with your firm's HR department." I left them there in the wreckage of their ambitions, Stephanie sobbing, Kevin's face white with panic, the entire room buzzing with the scandal that would define their careers. The valet brought my truck around, his eyes wide. He'd heard everything through the open doors. I tipped him $100. Why not? I'd be saving a fortune on Stephanie's shopping habits. I drove home to our quiet neighborhood, to the house I'd renovated with my own hands, to the life I'd built honestly. In the garage, I found the boxes Stephanie had used to store her summer clothes. I started filling them with everything she owned: her clothes, her jewelry, her books about success and optimization. I built a fire pit in the backyard years ago, a simple ring of stones where we used to roast marshmallows and drink beer. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. The fire started small, just some newspaper and kindling. Then I added her diplomas, watching the expensive frames warp in the heat. Her business books went next, all those guides to success and wealth that had poisoned her mind. Then the dresses, one by one, the synthetic fabrics melting and smoking. I saved the wedding album for last. Page by page, I fed it to the flames. Our smiling faces curled and blackened. The photo of her dancing barefoot disappeared into ash. The image of us cutting the cake, her hand over mine on the knife, became nothing. The fire burned for hours. I sat in a lawn chair, drinking beer and watching our marriage turn to smoke that drifted up toward the stars. Neighbors' lights came on, faces appeared in windows, but no one called the fire department. They knew better than to interfere with a man's grief. By dawn, nothing remained but ash and metal zippers, the detritus of a life she'd thrown away for a man in a better suit. I left her with nothing but the expensive dress on her back and drove home to start my life over. 6 months later, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, the same scarred oak surface where Stephanie used to spread out her files and laptop, working late into the night on accounts that I now know were fabricated. It's Friday evening, and I'm eating pizza, pepperoni and mushroom, the kind she stopped eating because it was too heavy. The house is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of my neighbor's lawnmower. The divorce was final last week. The prenup held up exactly as I'd said it would. Her father, the one who'd insisted on it to protect his daughter's future earnings from her blue-collar husband, called me to apologize. He'd seen the photos, heard about the party, knew what his daughter had become. "I misjudged you, Jack," he'd said, his voice rough with shame. "You were the best thing that ever happened to her." Stephanie contested nothing. How could she? The scandal had destroyed any leverage she might have had. The firm fired her and Kevin the Monday after the party. Gross misconduct, misuse of company funds, and conduct detrimental to the firm's reputation. The investigation I'd triggered revealed 2 months of falsified expense reports totaling almost $10,000. Kevin's fiancée left him the day she received the photos. She also happened to be a partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms, and word traveled fast in those circles. Last I heard, he'd left the state entirely, starting over in some small firm in Kansas where nobody knew his name. Stephanie moved back with her parents initially, but even that didn't last. Her mother, a woman who'd spent 40 years married to the same man, couldn't forgive the betrayal. She's renting a studio apartment now on the East Side, working as a bookkeeper for a plumbing company. I know because the owner is a friend of mine. He hired her as a favor, despite everything. "She's a good worker," he told me last week. "Keeps her head down, doesn't cause trouble." Looks like hell, though. I didn't ask for details. My business has never been better. Word spread through the construction community about what happened. Not the salacious details, but the core of it. A working man betrayed by a woman who thought she was too good for him, and how he'd handled it with dignity. I've had more referrals in the last 6 months than in the previous 2 years. The house feels different now. Cleaner somehow, though it was never dirty. I've renovated the bedroom, tearing out the walk-in closet she'd insisted on, and building a proper home office. The bathroom no longer smells like expensive perfume. The kitchen counters aren't cluttered with business magazines and self-help books. I kept one thing of hers, a coffee mug that says, "World's Best Wife," that I'd given her on our 2nd anniversary. I use it to hold pens now, a reminder that words don't mean anything without actions to back them up. There's a woman I've been talking to, a nurse named Lisa, who comes to the bar where my crew drinks on Fridays. She's pretty in an uncomplicated way, laughs at my bad jokes, and doesn't care that I have calloused hands and concrete dust in my hair. We're taking it slow. I'm not ready for anything serious, may never be ready for marriage again. But it's nice to have someone to talk to who doesn't use words like leverage and optimize. The restaurant where it all went down, Aurelio's, closed 2 months ago. Not because of the scandal, though that didn't help. The owner was overextended, trying to project an image of success that wasn't backed by reality. Sound familiar? I drove by when they were auctioning off the fixtures. The desk from that back office, the one where I'd caught them, sold for $50 to a guy who had no idea of its history. Sometimes I wonder if Stephanie thinks about that night. If she replays it in her head, looking for the moment she could have chosen differently. The moment she could have said no to that first lunch with Kevin, that first drink after work, that first dance that lasted too long. Or maybe she thinks about earlier moments, when she started believing that her education made her better than me, that success meant leaving behind the person who'd loved her when she had nothing. But mostly I don't think about her at all. I learned that some foundations, once broken, can never be repaired. But a man who knows his worth can always build again. The sun is setting now, painting the kitchen golden. The pizza's gone, the beer's empty. Tomorrow I've got a big project starting, a complete renovation of an old Victorian downtown. It'll take months, maybe a year. Good, honest work that will outlast any of us. I stand, rinse my plate, and look out at the backyard. The grass has grown over the spot where the fire pit used to be. This spring I'm thinking of planting something there. Maybe roses. Something with thorns. Beautiful but capable of drawing blood if you're not careful. That seems appropriate. My phone buzzes with a text from Lisa. Still on for dinner tomorrow? I text back, absolutely. My treat. She responds with a smiley face, simple and sincere. I head to the garage to review tomorrow's blueprints. There's always something to build, something to create from nothing. That's what I do. I take raw materials and make them into something solid, something that will stand the test of time. And if someone tries to burn it down, well, I've learned that I can rise from those ashes too. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.